Do streaming now. It just says it. I think we're not. Yeah, it does. That does work. I think. All right, start it again, everyone. Okay. All right. Good Vach. Can you hear me, David? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. Okay. Chassidus talks about how when you see a luminary, when you see light, rather, you know there's a luminary. Whenever you see a light, you know there's a luminary, there's a source of light. So since today's the third of Tammuz, let's talk about a light which reflects on the luminary. What I mean is sometimes the best way to connect to what it means to be a chassid Rebbe is by looking at the a chassid who was really devoted. Not only does that tell you a lot about what it means to be a chassid, it also reflects on what a Rebbe is. So tonight I wanted to share two stories. You can see I'm waiting to go on the flight, so I'm not sure how much time I'll have, but we'll try to make this happen. And first story is about Mendel Futerfas. Mendel Futerfas was a lot of challenges throughout his life, not the smallest of which was doing hard time in the Gulag in Siberia because of his activity in spreading Torah in Soviet Russia. One of the crimes that he was accused of by the Soviets was making false passports, which this was actually a justified and true accusation. Many many Russian citizens moved to Poland during World War II, and because of this, the Soviets allowed people to emigrate back from many Polish immigrants. Many Polish went to Russia, and Russians went to Poland. So the Russians allowed people with Polish passports to return to Poland and thus be freed from the Iron Curtain. So Mendel, he he was involved in creating these false passports, which allowed many people to pose as Polish citizens and thus have a safe exit to Poland and there to wherever they wanted to go. So Mendel's wife said that the way they would do this was they were risking their lives literally. It's obviously very difficult. The way they did this was that they would get together and they would fabring, and they would say L'chaim, and while they were in the midst of this fabringen all night saying L'chaim together, that allowed them to have the wherewithal, the dedication to actually engage in this very dangerous activity. So Remendel eventually was caught in producing these false passports, and he was sentenced to 8 years in hard labor in Siberia and the gulags. And during this time, his wife managed to escape to England. And when he was released, he wanted, of course, to join his family, go to England. But the KGB and Ovir was the immigration agency in Russia, the ones who issued the visas, and they said, "There's no way you're going to ever get be released." As one agent told him, "When a hair grows on my palm, that's when we will let you leave Russia." So he was, although he was freed from prison, but he wanted to leave Russia and he couldn't. And his brother, who took the name Lieberman, his name was Hendel Lieberman, who was a very talented artist. He had an audience with the Rebbe, and in the audience, he he told Rabbi Groner before he went in to visit the Rebbe, he's going to ask the Rebbe not just for a blessing that his brother, Mendel Futerfas, leave Soviet Russia, but he wants to also ask the Rebbe to promise him that he will leave Russia. Not just to give a blessing as customary, but to give him a promise. And the Rebbe, when Mendel came in, he shared how the Rebbe put his elbows on the table, put his head in his holy hands, and his face changed colors, and he was visibly shaken, and not just shaken, but shaking. And after quite some time, you know exactly how long, the Rebbe said, which means in Yiddish, there'll be an end to this. Avram, you have my boarding pass? Send it to you. You put it for me? Thanks. It's there'll be an end to this. And shortly after this, shortly after this, the Prime Minister of England visited Soviet Russia to engage in some kind of commerce with, engage some kind of commerce with Russia. And in exchange, as is customary when countries make a deal of such proportions, there are various gifts that are given. So this prime minister miraculously decided to ask the Jewish community what they would like. Miraculously, the Jewish community decided to ask the Babish community what they would like. And continuing the miracles, the Hasidim, of course, turned to the Rebbe, asked the Rebbe what they should request. What is the favor that they should ask for? And so they requested, as the Rebbe instructed, that Mendel Futerfas should be freed to move to London. But unfortunately, the KGB lead officer refused. And Wilson was shocked, and he said, "That's what they're refusing? How could they refuse? I'm going to cancel the entire financial agreement." And they had no choice. So Khrushchev, he told the KGB officer, "Either you're going to do this, or you're going to be, there's no way. You're not going to. There's not going to happen." And Baruch Hashem, because of this, Mendel was freed. And unfortunately, although he was freed, which of course was a great joy to him and his family, his sister passed away 2 days before his release. And interesting epilogue to this story. Of course, as a chassid, he wanted right away to visit the Rebbe, but the family decided that instead of telling him about his sister's passing and thus necessitate that his release be beginning of his mourning period, they decided to withhold this information from him until after 30 days had passed from his sister's passing, and thus he wouldn't be obligated to have the normal 7-day mourning period. Instead, he would have to just do a half hour or so of mourning instead. But because of this, when he came to visit New York, to have an audience with the Rebbe refused to see him because the Rebbe said he's going to ask for a blessing for his sister, and he doesn't want to. He'll have to respond to that. So, someone asked Mendel, seeing that he'd been given his life for Jews, for Hasidim, and he's did hard labor in Siberia, and yet he didn't get exactly a welcome when he came to New York. And how did he react? What did he think? Sir Mendel was a very devoted chassid, and Mendel said, "I was thinking that I'm probably undeserving of having an audience, probably undeserving of seeing him." That was his natural reaction. Anyway, so that was the first story I wanted to share. And the end. Rabbi Nachman Groner was here the Shabbos. Shared one more story I wanted to share with you. said that I think it was 1987 when there was a strike in the sanitation department in New York, and because of the strike, immediately there was an accumulation of garbage to dangerous levels in New York, and this led to a widespread pandemic of hepatitis. Greg Roner was then visiting from Kiryat Gat in New York. Both he, his wife, and his daughter all got this hepatitis, and he didn't know about this until he returned to Israel, and it was no one really wanted to go close to them because it was so contagious. But one day he saw that his oldest daughter is not even reacting; she's not responding. So immediately he took her to the doctor, to the hospital, and and after a short diagnosis, he said that she's so unwell that the this disease has gone and it will reach the kidneys, and God forbid, once it reaches the kidneys, then there's no return. So, so he asked the doctor if they're going to hospitalize his daughter. The doctor said they can't hospitalize her because it'll be too contagious, and so nothing he could do anyways. So he called up his father, the secretary, who told him that he would get him an immediate response. So dangerous. His daughter, he himself said that his face was yellow and green because of his illness, and he get an answer. The answer was, they ever said to him, "Why are you making a big deal out of something she'ein bei mamish, something that has no." This one, right? Around. Why are you making such a tumult? Okay. Why are you making a tumult out of something which has actually no substance? He told his father, "What are you talking about? Not something which has no substance. This is a real problem. His daughter is not responding. She may not survive. Why is it has no substance?" And his father said, "I'm telling you with the words that Rebbe answered." So miraculously, the very next day, I need to go in over here, right? Um, hold on. Well, yeah, one second. Miraculously, the very next day, he said his daughter recovered and he recovered to the point that there was no trace of this. You know, to go directly. His daughter took go to school a few days afterwards. It was just a miraculous overnight recovery, and so really shows us a lot about the power of the blessing of a tzaddik, but also sometimes we think that things are so impossible to get through, and all of a sudden, suddenly, things turn around. So the main thing is we should see turn around of the Golas coming to Mashiach, and we'll realize that all the obstacles we think are so hard are not really that's so hard. Anyway, good to everyone. Baruch Baruch Yosef.